Where's the camera?
Dan, Jen, the camera's right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Dan, Jen, and Ted also.
Yep.
Okay.
Did that fix the situation, Jess? Do I have a camera or no?
No, it's still not letting me.
All right, let me try one more thing. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Cassie hasn't signed on yet?
She's here.
Oh, is she? Okay.
Carrie, yeah.
Because I'm not able to see everybody either, so
Hi, Claire.
I don't know. I heard some of Barre was without power, so who knows what's going on out there. Okay, have you all read the minutes?
We did.
Yep.
And can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion that we approve the Finance Committee meeting minutes from Thursday, March 4th, 2021.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now, the next on the agenda is Rob. He's having trouble?
He should be okay now. He's just logging back in.
Okay. Okay, yep, I can see Rob.
Oh, there.
Figured it out.
Hey,
So, Rob, do you want to present your budget to us?
Yep, let me pull it up, and I'll share
You're
it.
doing the fire first, and then the ambulance, right?
Sure, that's how we want to do it. That's how we'll do it.
Okay, good.
Give me a second here. Let's see if I can share my screen. Share screen. Jess, could you enable me to share my screen, please? Or you can share my budget, either one.
You should be able to now.
All right, everybody seeing my budget?
Yep, I am.
All right, so pretty much level funded the entire budget, with the exception of projected 2% COLA for FY22.
Now,
Yes.
we're not including COLA right now.
Right, so I have my regular request, which is level
Okay.
funded, with the exception of my contractual raise, and then so everything else has been level funded from last year as far as salaries go, with the exception of training. I had to put a little extra training to cover the hours. We did get a few new firefighters, so I had to cover their hours of training, but that only increased by like $1,500. And then the department stipends is increased because we have more members that qualify for the 20-year longevity stipend. Other than that, everything is been level funded. For salaries, before I scroll down, is there any questions on the salary side of my fire budget?
no, sir.
Okay. As far as expenses go, I did have to increase the electric a little bit to cover the electric consumption and that covers 3 fire stations. Fire Station 1, Fire Station 2, and Fire Station 3 on Wheelwright Road. So just based on the trends of the electrical rates, that I factored in some extra money this year to cover that.
Rob, the screen that you're sharing,
Yes?
it says ambulance on my.
Oh, all right, I have two screens going, so I wasn't sure which one I'm sharing. All right, how's this one?
I was looking at the numbers and saying, what?
All right, how's this one? All right, let me get out
That
of
one
this.
looks much better, much better.
Here, here we go. All right, so, sorry about that. I was looking at the wrong screen. Okay, so you can see here my FY22 request for salaries.
Yep,
With the exception of contractual, the only thing I said, again, that went up was the longevity stipend line,
yep.
because we have more members over 20 years of service to the town. So pending any questions on the expenses for, a correction on the salaries. All right, scrolling down now that I'm in the right budget. Expenses, I have it broken down through utilities, so I did have to factor in an increase in electrical consumption at the station, and our internet went up slightly.
Uh-huh.
Other than that, everything else in the budget has remained level funded, with the exception of aerial ladder testing. That went up this year another $300.
Is there a reason why they go up, or just?
Everything goes up. I wish I had an answer for
Yeah.
you.
Inflation.
Now, the company that does our ladder testing is from central part of the country, Missouri, and they travel around and they come out here, so I'm assuming the increase is probably based on travel expenses and stuff like that.
Yep,
That's all this company does, so they schedule us with the other local departments, and they do all of the ones here at the same time. And then, other than that, the only other increase, our protective equipment, I had to put that up $500, that's our PPE, and that was just to cover the cost of materials.
now the PPE, isn't that being paid by the CARES Act?
No, this is our firefighting PPE, our turnout gear,
Okay.
helmets,
Okay.
boots.
Yeah,
The CARES Act covered, it did cover some firefighter PPE, but mostly respiratory for, against COVID,
Okay.
face masks and stuff like that.
yep,
And then, my recruit training actually, decreased a little bit because the number of firefighters renewing their EMT this year is a little bit less, so that line at overall, the budget, it went up, proposed budget has gone up about $4,000. If I have any questions on any of the lines?
Can I ask a question about the stipends?
Yes.
Other than years of service, are there any requirements to obtain your stipend?
No, so by the town personnel policy, any part-time employee with over 20 years of service to the town gets a $150 stipend, and we pay that out like the first week of December for that year. Usually guys and girls use it for Christmas, and then any full-time employee gets $300 for 20 years or more service. But there is not a requirement of attendance to say. I mean, if you're on the roster, you qualify for it. Does that answer the question? Good enough?
It does. How often do you review your rosters?
Pretty frequently. We usually go through our rosters. We have a training attendance policy that we've been a little laxed on in the last year just because of COVID and all the restrictions around meeting in person and training. So we do have a requirement that members have to maintain. We don't have a requirement for responding to calls.
Right.
So they're to say that, you know, you don't have to make a percentage of the calls per year because you never know when a call is going to come in. But we do have a requirement that you have to make 50% of the training a year, unless there's an excused absence for, you know, an injury or something like that. But somebody would come and talk to me personally and say, I can't make training for reasons, you know, beyond their control. We do have makeup training, so we do scrub our roster pretty frequently, you know, so well, everybody on the roster that gets the stipend is an active. We're fortunate that we have a pretty big portion, percentage of our fire department membership that has over 20 years of service, and they're all active.
That's amazing.
Lucky.
Thank you.
How much longer they'll be with us, just cross our fingers, but we have them for now, which we're pretty fortunate about that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No problem.
Are there any other questions anyone wants to ask Rob?
No, good job.
All right, ambulance. All right. So this one, is, as you know, is the little more complicated budget. Some of our paramedics and our EMTs have had step raises. You know, we have our wage and comp plan. So due to a couple of increases in wages, that paramedic salaries line has gone up. Again, we have a paramedic staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to have us run at the paramedic level. So that number includes vacation, and I factor in 2 weeks of vacation and a week of sick time to cover for the full-time member. He obviously uses his vacation. Fortunately, he doesn't really call in sick. Knock on wood, he stays healthy. The overtime budget I did increase this year just based upon the trend of the last year. Obviously with COVID, that we had a lot of our members working the ambulance were, I don't want to say what's the word I'm looking, exposed to positive COVID cases. We had quite a few. I think we've had over 30 calls where we had COVID positive patients or COVID positive residents for fire calls. We've had over 70 calls that were suspected COVID that met the COVID requirements, and we never found out if they tested positive or COVID or not, especially back in the spring. So based on the last year, we ended up having to use more overtime just because of people being quarantined. Some of our paramedics work full-time for other services, and then, you know, they work in Barre part-time. Some of them had to get quarantined for exposures at their full-time jobs, and some of their full-time jobs actually did not want them working in an outside department for fear of, you know, getting a COVID exposure in Barre and bringing it back to their community. So that line has gone up, and the other lines have stayed all the same. So that was really the big increase for that particular line. Do I have any questions on the salaries line? Okay.
Now,
Yes, Claire?
on the, you've got the EMTs full, part-time, I guess it is. You don't have any numbers in for FY21 and FY22. Can you explain that? Especially for our two new.
Oh, so what we did, when I worked with Andrew for the FY21 budget, what we did is took those two lines, the part-time and the basic, and we just worked that into, we took the basic overtime and the paramedic overtime, and we just combined it to overtime because the full-time employees, there was no need to delineate whether it was overtime for a paramedic or one of the EMT basics. So we just took that basic overtime and put it into that one overtime line. And
Okay,
then what we ended up doing with the EMT basic is we just, the part-time, we just put that all into the one line that you see, EMT basic, FT, that we just combined that for this fiscal year. So that's the way
okay,
our budget was formed for this year. That was a recommendation based off of Andrew that we went with.
okay. Anyone else have any questions on that at all?
Nope.
All right, moving down to expenses. So for administration, our cell phone plan went up it went up $84, so we covered for that. A little bit of increase on office supplies, printer ink, very expensive. Everything else level funded. Our service contracts, so working with the ambulance, we have a service contract. We have to, with the local hospital, we contract with Hayward Hospital, so we have to pay them to be our service provider, our medical control. That stayed the same as last year. Our ambulance license fee actually went down $100 with the state, which was good, and that's the fee we have to pay to the state, and they come out and inspect our ambulances every year, and our ambulances are licensed through the state, so that covers that licensing fee. We have a license through our narcotics license because we carry prescription narcotics on the ambulance for pain control, so we have to have a license for that. Our infusion pumps, we actually got rid of those this year. They got recalled, and those were pumps that if a patient needed medication, like you'd have at a hospital through an IV, this pump we'd have in the ambulance to pump the medication through an IV and regulate it at the proper rate. We no longer have those. They got recalled, so we don't have to have that service contract anymore. So we saved a little bit there. Our CMED dues, what's that?
Do you still do the IVs?
Yeah, oh yeah, we do the IVs, we just don't have the pumps anymore.
Okay,
That would pump, we still give the same medications, but the pumps that we had got recalled and they
Okay.
weren't able to fix them, so we just don't have them anymore.
okay,
It was a very rare thing to use anyways, so we don't have those, we don't have to have that service agreement. CMED dues went up pretty significantly this year, and that every time we transport a patient to the hospital in the ambulance, we have to call the hospital from the ambulance and give the hospital a heads up, hey, we're coming in, and we give them a heads up with what the patient has and how long it's going to take us to get there, so they can make sure everything's prepared for our arrival. The company that handles that, Central Mass EMS at Holden, we have to pay them. That's what our bill was this year. So it's based on the number of times we use their service. So that went up pretty significantly this last year. Our cardiac monitors agreement stayed the same. I think everything else, our Lucas service went up this year as well a little bit. And the Lucas is the CPR machine. You may have seen we have a machine that actually does chest compressions, and we have two of them, one on each ambulance, and the annual service on that did go up for both of those this year. But overall, I think our service agreement maintenance contracts has actually decreased a little bit. You'll notice our second year cardiac payment is 0. So when we got our new cardiac monitors 3 years ago, we did a lease purchase program, and we put the lease purchase price into our budget. So it was the yearly payment was a line item in my budget. This last year, well, the current fiscal year now, we paid it off, so we don't have that payment anymore. So our service contracts actually went down, substantially.
now, Rob, I noticed on there, you've got insurance then, in 19 and 20 and 21.
Insurance, what do you, oh, right there.
Yeah,
Yes,
because
so Yep,
And
so,
we don't, not having it this year?
nope, so we actually had, when the ambulance was still, when it was not under the fire department before the merge, they had an insurance policy. When Heather Monroe was acting town administrator, we kind of were going through, we were cleaning up our insurance policies with the fire department and the on-call firefighters. And we found out that when we merged, the town's Maya insurance covered the EMTs, so this was just an extra insurance that was providing us no extra coverage, so we got rid of it, based on her recommendation. And then,
Now, for our new members, can you explain how our ambulance billing works?
yep, so, I'll finish out with the budget real quick and then I'll get into
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
So if you look, our total budget this year, is actually less than last year. Our last year we were the current fiscal year we're in now, we were at 557, 402, and for FY '22, I'm asking for 554. So we actually came down about $3,000. And for the new members of the finance committee, every time we transport a patient in the ambulance, we bill the patient's insurance based on our ambulance rates, which the price of the ambulance, our service level dictates that. We have 3 levels: basic transport, basic life support, advanced life support 1, and advanced life support 2. All the money that we generate through our receivables from ambulance billing goes into a receipt reserve account, and at the annual town meeting, we vote to transfer however much from our receipt reserve account to cover the cost of our ambulance budget. Now, I can tell you, I can actually bring this up if you give me a second. I can tell you that we do not make what we bill, and that there's many factors that go into that, but most of that is because the state dictates, I should say the government dictates our Medicare and Medicaid, and a majority of the patients we transport in the ambulance are Medicaid and Medicare patients. So it doesn't matter what we send them for a bill. Medicare says for this call you get $350. If we get, we could bill $5,000, that's just a high number. Medicare says you get $350, and it is what it is. So are you seeing my billing report for this year so far?
Yep.
All right, so when you look, so we contract with Coastal Medical out of Sutton, pretty good company. They handle all of our billing. So when we bring a patient to the hospital, we have to write our hospital report, our ambulance report, what we did, what we saw, medications given. They then we have an online system. They go in, they look at our reports, they bill the person's insurance. They do all the billing of that. So if you look, this is for fiscal year 21. If you look in July, that first line that says billing, we as in the fire department and the town and Coastal billed out $72,960 based upon the number of transports we provided. We received of that 72,000, we collected, brought into the town's account 23,470. If you look at the adjustment column in the middle there, the adjustments are what Medicare is, what basically the government takes off the top. So again, an ALS one call is, I think we bill $1,350. If the patient has Medicaid, Medicare, or Mass Health, it's a $400 bill. So they take the remaining balance right off the top, and that's what that adjustment category is. So, it takes a little bit of time from when they send a bill till the billing, the insurance company rectifies the bill and sends the payment, but you can see how much we bill every month and how much we actually collect. So there's quite a difference there. So far, to date, for fiscal year 21, we have billed out $734,000. we've only received 260,000 of that $734,000. And if you go over to the far right, you'll see where it says month-end balances. That's how much money is outstanding that we've billed out that has not been collected. And the coastal handles all of that, and it is what it is.
So that money that's not collected, that's uninsured folks that basically can't afford it, that just let it go to collections?
It could be a number of things. There could be a lawsuit involved from a motor vehicle accident, who was responsible, which, sometimes when things go to court or litigation, it may take years for that to get settled. But most of that is patients with no insurance, patients that don't give us the correct address, or they move out of town. We don't have a way to get them a bill. People that have died, patients died and they were paying. Some people have payment plans that don't have insurance, and they say, hey, I can pay you $10 a month, and if that's what they do, that's what they do, and then the remaining, that's just whatever's non-collected. So back in July, we had a total of 406,000 that was uncollectible, and that was going back 3 years. And Coastal made the recommendation to the selectmen to write off 260-ish or so thousand, because they said you're just not going to get that money. So if you look in August for adjustments, you see it goes all the way up to 292,000. That's because that included the write-off from the previous years. And then you'll see in the month-end balances for August, that number dropped down to 184. And about
On the rates,
go ahead.
the rates you were talking about, that would be paid by private insurance, is that a regulated rate that we would ask for, or is that something that you dictate at the town level?
Nope, every ambulance service sets their own rates. So we have our rates set, and one thing I did 2 years ago, our rates were on the very low end of what ambulance services were charging. So we actually increased our rates, and if you look across the pretty much central Mass, we're kind of in like the low middle end of the billing rates. So some departments charge more than us, some charge less, very few charge less. We're kind of right in the middle as far as our rates go for service.
And do you think we're ever in a situation where our actual expenses are more than the rate we're charging?
Oh, yeah, no, let me put it this way. If we take, let's say somebody has private insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield,
Yeah.
and we transport that patient, our rates cover the cost of the call. So
Okay.
we're not losing money to provide that service. However, if that same call is for somebody who is Medicaid, Medicare, Mass Health, we don't cover the cost of the call, or we break even. But there's nothing we can do about that. That's set by the government. So that is what it is. About 72% of every patient we transport is Medicaid, Medicare, or Mass Health. So some of the more affluent communities, they don't have as much, they don't have the difference in the adjustments. Our demographics are what they are, and overall, I think we provide a good service, and our rates are the rates.
Yeah, I'm
Trust
sure.
me, I can talk all night about how broken the insurance system is.
Yeah, yes, we all could.
Well, I'm sure our location doesn't help either, because I mean, where are we sending a majority of people? Out to Worcester or over to Hayward?
Well, we do charge per mileage, so our bill, there's two, when you are transported in our ambulance, there's two sections of the bill. There's the service, so basic life support, advanced life support 2, and then there's mileage. So we actually charge $25 per mile. So our billing, our ambulance rates, the rate for service is kind of on the lower side of the average of Central Mass. Our transport mileage, our $25 per mile is also somewhat on the lower side, but if you look at our ambulance bills, they may be higher because, for instance, if you go to Worcester from Holden, they may, don't quote me, I'm not sure what their transport mileage is, but they're only going 6 or 7 miles where we're going 20 to 25 miles. So I don't want to bring the rates to the point where it's ridiculous money for an ambulance bill, but we still need to make sure we're covering the costs of wear and tear on the ambulance, tires, brakes, supplies, payroll, insurance, all that stuff.
Great, I appreciate the explanation.
No problem.
So Rob,
Again,
one
yes.
question on that. If somebody has private insurance, do you cover 100% of your bill that way?
Yeah,
In addition?
typically, if we transport somebody with private insurance, they typically pay the bill,
The whole thing?
100%.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
So what ends up happening is some communities raise their rates
Right.
higher. So if they do transport somebody with private insurance, it can make up, but again, I don't want to get into a
Right.
debate about
Right.
our healthcare system, because this is what it is. So to date, and one thing I'm pretty happy with, and I'll bring it up, is that for FY20, so when I first took over as chief, we only were bringing in about $300,000 in ambulance receipts. So for this fiscal year, for the previous fiscal year, which is what we used to fund this fiscal year's budget, we brought in $430,000 in receipts. We billed out 1.1 million, but we brought in, not even half of that, which it is what it is. That's nothing we can really do about that. So that 430,000 that we brought in last year was transferred in to cover part of our, this year's operating budget for the ambulance. So we have been doing a good job, I think, of increasing the billing revenue, and that goes to our EMTs and paramedics, making sure they're doing the reports properly, gathering the right paperwork at the hospital, getting signatures. So that, that's definitely a win, I think, for the service.
Excellent.
I can,
Anything else?
let me go back. So for fiscal year 21, which we're in now, the ambulance budget was $557,402. We had $460,000 in our billing account that we transferred. We transferred $15,000. So for those that are unaware, the town of New Braintree does not have an ambulance. They do not have an ambulance service. So they contract with us. We are the primary 911 ambulance for the town of New Braintree, which they pay us $15,000 for that coverage. And then just like in Barre, if any of their residents call for the ambulance, we bill the insurance. So with that 15,000 plus the 460, the total cost to the taxpayers to Barre for an ambulance service was 82,000. This year, I'm hoping that the numbers will be the same as far as EMS revenue, billing revenue. I projected it low just because I'm not 100%, I can't tell what we're gonna do for ambulance calls. Our ambulance calls have been, our average calls, our numbers are higher, but with COVID, we've done a lot more ambulance calls, but we've done less transports, if that makes sense. So a lot of people in the last year since COVID hit, didn't want to go to the hospitals, right? Because, nobody wanted to go to the hospital and get exposed to people with COVID. So people were having medical emergencies. They'd call the ambulance, we would get there, and some of the non-emergent calls we were able to take care of at their residence, and they didn't want to go to the hospital, so we don't bill for those services. So our call volume has been the same, if not higher, but our transports have been less. And one of the other issues we've had with our billing is a little lower. I think right now we're about 30,000 less currently than where we were this time last year, is with everybody working from home and the staff at Coastal having to do alternating shifts for exposure reasons like everybody else in the world. Some of our billing hasn't been sent in the quickest fashion just because of all that stuff. So I'm hoping we make up for it in the next few months, that we receive some of that money we billed out. But right now I'm projecting about 435,000. I do think it's going to be higher. And we do still have some money in that account from last year. So the overall budget has gone down from 557 to 554, but based upon how much we receive in the next few months, again, I'm projecting 435, but I hope that when we hit the town meeting, I can tell you that we've gotten more than that.
Okay.
Sounds good, Rob. You do a good job on your budget
Thank you.
sheets.
Does any, I know there's a few new people on the finance. Does anybody have questions on how the ambulance system works as far as billing or calls or anything like that? You know, we only bill if it's a transport. So if somebody, again, calls 911 because they may be having chest pain, and we get there and find out that, you know, we put them on our cardiac monitors and it could just be indigestion and they may not want to go. We don't bill for that. You know, if somebody gets in a car accident and they just get bandaged but they don't go to the hospital, we don't bill for that. We only strictly bill for calls in which we physically transported somebody to the hospital. And I think I had it someplace, I have a note somewhere. I think for fiscal year 21, or I should say for year 20, for the year 2020, we did over 650 transports with our ambulances. So we're fairly, for a small community, we're fairly busy. We've done an excellent job, and I got to give a lot of credit to the members of the service of actually having both ambulances staffed at the same time. You know, it's not uncommon for us to have multiple ambulance calls in progress at the same time, 2 or 3. Sometimes we've had 4 ambulance calls at the same time, and our members have really stepped up in the last year, and we've been able to get both ambulances staffed and transporting at the same time.
When do you expect the new ambulance to arrive?
I got my fingers crossed. I'm telling everybody August. Again, COVID. Seems like every excuse in the world you can blame on COVID. We ordered the ambulance in July, and typically it takes 4 to 6 months. The ambulance cab and chassis has arrived at the ambulance facility, the production facility in Florida. They have started to build it. However, the supply chain for parts is still backlogged, so I'm telling everybody August, and I'm hopeful that maybe we'll see it in June by the town meeting, but no later than August, pending no more shutdowns or, you know, obviously when the ambulance company plants had members affected with COVID, so they had to shut down, do deep cleanings, and as with seems like every supply chain in the country, everything has been kind of screwed up overall, so it's taken longer than I hoped, but it's in the process, which is a good thing. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Do we want to go through I got capital too requests, we go through that for you?
What was that?
On the CapEx?
Let me, chat box.
Like the admin vehicle and stuff?
I don't see any questions in the chat box.
No, the capital project request?
Oh, yes, I
Yeah,
don't,
did you want to go over those?
yes,
Rob?
do
Yeah.
you have those, Jess? I don't have those in front of me.
Yeah, I'll have
The other thing, I know you had asked a question in the email that went out about tonight about grants. Let me share my screen one more time. So we were actually, this was a really good year for us for grants. So I hope everybody can see it. So for 2020, the department actually, we received $111,074.90 in grant funding. We also applied to replace our fire engine, number 5, for $575,000 through a fire assistance to firefighter grant. We didn't get that grant. We apply for that one every single year, so one of these days it's going to happen. But for 2020, of that $111,000, which I think is a pretty good amount of money, our fire prevention officer, James DiVirgilio, he does the Safe Education program at the elementary schools, and he got $6,313 to assist with the fire education for not only the students at Ruggles Lane, but for our senior population. And we've done we're working on getting those programs back. This was kind of a tough year with the school situation, but we managed to go up to Ruggles Lane about a month and a half ago, and we did do a fire education program for the kindergarten, which we've been working with the school to try to bring that back. Obviously, when the restrictions ease up a little bit, that will be better. We got $2,000 from the Volunteer Fire Assistance Grant to replace protective clothing, forest fire, or brush fire protective clothing for our firefighters. We got 2 EMPG grants, their MEMA, Emergency Management Agency, Emergency Management Preparedness Grant. We got $2,700 to get 2 new rescue chainsaws and $2,700 to buy 2 new portable radios. The Stetson School Community Giving Fund, we applied for a grant, and they give out $1,000 micro grants at Stetson that the students pick out every year. And we applied for some portable suction units for the ambulances, and the students at Stetson actually decided to give us double the money, so they gave us $2,000, which bought 2 suction units that we use in the back of the ambulance. We got $7,600 for the Assistance to Firefighter Grant to purchase COVID-related PPE. So we were able to get every firefighter and every EMT and paramedic respirators to protect us from COVID when we're going into people's homes or dealing with anybody that may have been COVID exposed. And actually, back when COVID hit, we wore them on every single call. We still do, actually. I don't know what I'm saying. Someday we won't, but we're still wearing them. And the big grant that we got $82,761 from the AFG program to purchase all new hydraulic rescue tools, the Jaws of Life. So we were able to get the Jaws of Life we had. Some of them were actually older than me, and they don't really work on today's new vehicles, especially hybrids and Teslas. Our new vehicles are very tough. So that $82,000, we were able to upgrade and replace all of our Jaws of Life with the best Jaws of Life on the market currently that can do a lot. So we just got that grant back in November. We just got the tools and everything in service, which was huge. And then on top of that, with the Assistance to Firefighter Grant, the town has to match 5%. So we had $82,000 was the grant award. We had to add 5%, and after we had written the grant, they had come out, right after we put in for the grant, they had come out with an upgraded stabilization kit, which happened to be another $5,000. So that was really what we wanted, and we were able to get a donation from the Barre Savings Bank charitable organization to cover that increased cost, which also covered some of the town's match. So we were able to get, roughly $90,000 in vehicle rescue equipment, and believe it or not, we are actually probably got some of the best vehicle electrification equipment in the state right now, which is a good feeling, so. It's a good year for grants.
Fantastic job. We really appreciate that, the extra work that goes in to get the grants.
We try, we try.
Well,
all
it
the
sounds
time.
like you've been doing a great job at it, as well as trying.
Thank you. Tracking them is the hard part.
Oh,
Sometimes
I-
getting them is easier.
No, it's not easy.
Great.
All right, so the capital items, I don't know, Jess, if you would tell me what we got, and I can talk about them.
Brush trucks and cars. Oh, that's his sheet on it, yeah. Great. I wonder if anybody else did this. Actually fill out the
Nope.
sheets.
Can you guys see my screen now?
Yes, I see it, Jess, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, so as you know, we need a vehicle, a vehicle at the station. I know we tabled it at the special town meeting back in November. I need it again. Unfortunately, prices have gone up, so that number has gone up as well. We're still looking at probably 8 to 10 weeks from the time we order it till it will be here. So, you know, we probably won't even see it till October, but it's still our number one priority. The needs hasn't changed. Any questions on that one?
Yeah, wasn't it for 45? Is this a different vehicle?
No, it
And-
was, and that was off the that was off the 2021 prices. However,
Okay.
since November, prices have gone up in everything, radios, red lights, and now
What's
it's
this for?
about $10,000 more.
Well,
Okay.
it's a vehicle that they use every day to,
We do use this every day. We've always had two SUVs. The chief car, I have my chief car is an SUV, and we always had a second SUV, which was my chief car is more than just a SUV. It's got radio communication equipment, accountability. It's got all the files for our buildings, hydrant locations, all of our technology is in my car. So it's a command vehicle, as well as a vehicle for me to travel to emergencies with, but it's also a command vehicle for radio communications. The second car that we had doubled to do the same thing, and it was the car that the members of the department would use. If we have to go out of town to the hardware store, if we have to go to the auto parts store, that was the car they would go out and do inspections on. During the day, the fire inspector is at the station. He's also an EMT. He responds to medicals as the third person and assists the ambulance. I usually go with him as well. If I'm tied up, he'll go in that. And that's what that car serves the purpose of. One thing we've really been trying to do, especially with COVID and the severity of some of the COVID calls, is if it's a basic life support call, which means the paramedics is not needed, we leave the paramedic in town, and the fire inspector will man the ambulance. And that way, if we have a second ambulance call, we have the paramedic available. So it could be, if it's an ALS, advanced life support level call. I can't even tell you how many times in the last year that we've had a second call, and myself will get we tone out if nobody shows up. Then I get on the ambulance with that paramedic, and we're able to staff both ambulances. We have a disadvantage of, we don't have a lot of paramedics that live in Barre. You know, we have a lot of firefighters, we have some EMTs. So when we have a second ambulance call or a fire call, you know, the tones go off, and if somebody's available, they show up. We don't have any paramedics to do that. So if the paramedic that's at the station is at the hospital on a call, and we get a second ambulance call that requires a paramedic, we have to call another community to come in for their paramedic to intercept with us, which we pay that community money. It costs, there's a flat fee that we pay, but you know, take the money aspect aside, if somebody needs paramedic level care, they have to wait that 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes for that ambulance to show up. So having this car is important to drive around town and do all the running around and the inspections, and for that third person to respond on ambulance calls, or sometimes 3 or 4 depending on the type of call that it is. So the plan would be to take my chief car and make that what we call our car 2, and then to get a new command chief car. That's what this is showing. Any questions? All right, item number 2. So this last year, our ladder truck carries a lot of ground ladders. We have a 45-foot ladder, and it failed during its annual inspection test. It failed and had to get taken out of service, and we don't have currently a big ladder that length, and a new one's $3,500 that I didn't have in my budget to cover, so I put that as a capital request. All right, so as you know, a number of years ago, the fire station on Wheelwright Road got damaged, and based on its age, it was built in 1822. Part of the insurance claim was that we could not put big fire trucks back into the building. So the vacant fire station on Main Street across from Bradford Apartments and Yummy Garden, next to the post office, we moved back into that station. Barre always had 3 fire stations, and I believe that station on Main Street, we shut it down in 1997. Could be 1996, 1997, and there hasn't been fire trucks in there. When that station on Wheelwright Road got damaged, we moved back in to the station on Main Street. We have 2 fire trucks there, primarily protects South Barre. They're the first new fire companies to the South Barre section of town. Very important station. Station was in disrepair. I mean, once we stopped using it as a fire station, I think the Elder Bus Service rented it for a while. It was vacant for a while. It housed some emergency management equipment. So we moved back in, you know, obviously needed renovations. It didn't have any water service, so we had the DPW and water department ran water lines, and we've been fixing it up. And last year on my capital plan, I had wall lockers to hang our turnout gear. Currently, we just have a nail in the wall that our turnout gear, our protective equipment hangs from. It's exposed to the sun and the dirt and the grime. Each set of turnout gear, you know, is about $3,000. Yeah, we have $45,000 worth of turnout gear hanging on nails at the station. I did ask for PPE wall lockers last year. I know everything with COVID, we tabled all that stuff. So I added that into the price for some renovation stuff. I know the members at Fire Station 2 have been donating a lot of their time to go down there and fix up the station. They've been hanging sheetrock, putting up painting walls. So we need some more money just to finish those renovations, about $10,000, added to the $5,000 for wall lockers for the men and women from Station 2 down there. So, this request, my chief car is a 2013. You know, it's almost going to be 8 years old this year. It's got some bubble rust starting, some corrosion, and I got a cost to have this done last year of $3,500, I believe. That was the number. 3,800, correction. So what I would like to do is, the vehicle's, you know, still in good shape, and if we can correct the corrosion now, it will last another 10 years. So I was requesting 3,800. So if I do get the new car one, we'll be able to take this car out of service, spend the $3,800, have the corrosion repaired, and then, it should, pending any major problems, should last another 10 years.
That's it, chief.
Oh, that's it, easy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions on any of that?
Nope.
Oh, that's great, Chief.
I know on our capital plan, we were supposed to ask for a new fire truck this year, but I figured I wasn't gonna ask, so I appreciate everything over the last few years, very supportive, so I do thank you. We did get the new fire engine a few years ago, which has been huge, the new ambulance, which I was really hoping I'd be able to have it by now, but it's coming, so we do appreciate the support on all sides. I speak for everybody on the department when I say that.
Thank you.
No
Well,
problem.
we thank you, Rob,
Yep.
No problem.
for everything you've done. In wanting this vehicle, you had it on in the annual meeting and then the special town meeting, and
Yeah, take time. So we made do. We were very fortunate. Rutland got a new pickup truck, utility truck, and they were getting rid of their other one, so it's not pretty, but it does the job, and they donated it to us, and we've been making it work. So we got fortunate in that aspect, but I think it's only safe. I don't think it's fair for our members to be driving around a 1997 that another department was sending to the scrapyard. And I know you guys support it, so I appreciate everything. Thank you.
thank you.
Chief.
All right, any other questions? All right, I want to go eat some dinner. Have a good night. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Now, the regional dispatch.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
All right, here. Can everybody see on their screen now? Good. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep,
couldn't hear anybody. So this is actually my second version, because we were waiting.
I can print the whole thing.
Rates to come, which they did, and they're looking at a 6.3%
Only the
increase.
interest.
Right. Always pay.
That is still not a final number. The insurance committee through Rutland is still looking over different options where the cost would come down to. Which I'll get into a little bit later, and you'll see those figures. During fiscal 20 and the late fiscal 20, we did have one dispatcher resign during that time period, and we also promoted one of our internal dispatchers to the rank of supervisor for the overnight shift. Currently, what you're seeing right now is the statistics for each community, with population, the CAD calls entered into the system, as well as the 911 call volume. And as you can see with 911 call volume, it has pretty much doubled from fiscal 19 to fiscal 2020. So we have seen a influx of calls coming into the center. And everyone's CAD calls being entered into the system have increased, with the exception of 2 communities being Hubbardston and Oak Hill. But everybody else has had some drastic spikes in calls as well, whether those are emergency or just informational calls. Does anybody have any questions on that sheet there?
Yeah, could you just say what the CAD, what does CAD call mean?
Yep, so what a CAD call is our records management system that's linked to the police department, fire departments, and EMS departments throughout the 5 communities. We utilize that system to enter in every call for service into that system. So whether it's someone that comes to the Barre Police Department in the lobby and a request to speak to an officer regarding, could be anything, harassment or an LTC, we log those calls into the CAD system. As well as 911 calls for service, those get entered into there as well.
So the CAD,
any call.
so CAD call numbers include the 911 calls?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Next slide just shows some of the training that all the coaches have gone through in fiscal 2021, as well as some events that the center has attended, and new technology that was implemented into the center. APCO and Telecom is our electronic medical dispatching software. Anytime someone calls 911 for a medical call, there is a certain script that every dispatcher has to follow that deals with each different type of call that could come in. All those answers are then relayed to the paramedics or EMTs that are out in the field, which help them prepare themselves for when they get to the scene if they need some special equipment. So that was implemented over the last year, which was fully funded by the state 911 department. Also, the E911 to CAD. So what that is, it's an interface that links our 911 system right to the CAD system. So it will pull your name, address, and phone number right from the 911 system and put it right into the call taker's call screen, saving them some time to utilize the spare time to ask those questions that need to be answered. CLQ, which is a call location query, it's currently still in the process. It has not been fully implemented yet. That will allow the call takers at the center to be able to push a link to any caller who calls the center, and it could provide us their GPS location, as well as if you're on scene and you see something suspicious, with that link as well, you can attach photos to that link and it'll come right into the CAD system, which then can be viewed by the police officers responding to the scene. So if it's a suspicious motor vehicle, now that officer has that right in his cruiser and he knows what he's looking for. That can go for suspicious people, crimes, anything like that. So that's coming in the future. Both that and the E911 interface were funded by CARES Act money through Rutland. And then the last piece was the Wheeler Road Tower, which is about 95% complete. That allows all our EMS departments to be able to contact us via radio. when they arrive in Worcester at either, previous to that, they would have to call on the telephone and let us know when they were there, give us the time that they were there, and that led for a lot of missed calls, no calls being placed, so discrepancy in their call times. So this tower alleviates that process and provides more security for those responders as well. Any questions? Just some goals that I have, which is policies and procedures, as well as our APCO training accreditation process that we're currently in the process of. With our training program accredited by APCO, which is the main company that we utilize for pretty much everything, our training certifications. Now the main part, the budget. So this slide pretty much shows pretty much a summary of the whole budget. And then after this, it'll break it down each section after that. So overall, we're looking at a $53,936 increase to this year's budget. Most of that increase is due to contractual increases within the department.
Can you list some?
Yep, once I get into each line item, I'll be able to tell you each thing that's gonna increase.
Okay, because 8,000 is quite a large increase.
Yep, so let me get to, so the next couple slides are just budget versus actual history over the last 3 fiscal years, each section. So to answer your question, so we're starting in the wages. So let me just flip to my page here. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So all these increases here are contractual due to the collective bargaining unit between the dispatchers union as well as the town of Rutland, and then my contract as well with the town of Rutland. So all these items, my salary went up 5,000. Supervisors, you're looking at a $39,000 increase. The full-time dispatchers, 78,000. The part-time wages went up 11,000, but that is going to alleviate $57,000 worth of overtime by increasing that line by 11,000. So overall, it's a $76,000 increase to the wage line item.
Now, you are under union contract?
The dispatchers are, and then I have a separate contract with the town of Rutland.
How long is the contract for?
My contract,
Yeah,
that's 3 years. And I believe that will end next June. And same with the dispatchers, they have a 3-year contract with the town, and theirs will end, I think, 2 years from now. Indirect charges.
Are those one-time increases, or are those every year?
With the dispatchers, depending on what they negotiated, there's increases each year, depending on the rate is. So the first 2 years of their contract, they did do a wage adjustment, and then the final year, they did a 1% increase.
Why would the part-time dispatchers go up 47%?
Go back to that.
How many part-time do you have?
Right now, we have 4 in training and 1 that is cleared to actually take calls on the desk. It went up 47% to alleviate $57,000 in our overtime budget. Anybody else have any other questions regarding this line item before I move to the next one? Okay. So the next one is indirect charges, which is of a couple things, being in public safety complex, as well as our health insurance, and Medicare and retirement. So like I said at the beginning, this right now is showing a 6.3% increase to those figures, but we will find out on March 24th if those will be going down to 0.93%. But currently right now with that 6.3% increase, we do have a reduction to that line of $31,000. And that is due to a couple of our new dispatchers did not take insurance with the town, as well as one employee that we did have that resigned, had a special out-of-state insurance plan, which drove our health insurance line item substantially up. So now that that person is no longer with us, it did drastically reduce the health insurance line as well. So these figures could go down even further after March 24th.
They won't
Good.
go up.
No, they're at the max rate now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you explain why the overtime account went up? Is that way bigger than you expected this year?
Which one are you talking about? I'm sorry.
Back one slide on your
Back one slide.
overtime. You said that your part-time dispatchers are gonna eliminate this overtime expense.
Right.
So-
Having more part-time personnel and being able to appropriate more money to the part-time personnel, and mandating certain hours requirements with those part-timers, it's going to be able to alleviate that overtime.
So original budgets weren't for that kind of overtime. You weren't expecting that kind of number?
Right.
So next year, we would expect to see no overtime, right?
That's what I'm hoping for. We're trying to move that way. Any questions regarding the indirect charges? Supplies and uniforms account, level funded. There is no change to either one of those line items. And then the last line item, which is our purchase services account. This is where we have that $8,000 increase. So the first line item is our department cell phones, and due to increases with AT&T, we had to increase our line just a little bit to cover next year's costs. Line item 2, which is our generator service contracts, which is the generator that is on Pleasant Street in Barre. That's the contract for the service for that generator. Again, that's level funded. The third line item is our radio and equipment equipment maintenance contracts. That's to have all our towers and other equipment within the district serviced by our radio company, keeping giving our equipment longer. So that was level funded. Number 4 is our internet and phone services within the department. Again, due to their increase, we had to increase that line item a little bit. Number 5, level funded, that's our CGIS maintenance division. To be able to access the CGIS network to run motor vehicle plates, licenses and all that stuff, and provide that information to the police departments. Number 6 is level funded. That is to fund our reverse 911 system for all 5 communities. 7, again, is level funded. That is our armed responding system, which all the fire departments utilize to let dispatch know who's responding to calls for service. It cuts down on some radio traffic. 8 is the contract with National Grid. That's for all tower sites, and that was level funded. 9 was level funded. That's our post office box. 10 is our CAD system, which is by TriTech Software Systems, other known as IMC. That $2,000 increase is their annual increase to their annual maintenance for their system.
So will that be an increase every year?
They've been a steady increase each year, yes.
And why do they increase it each year?
For their services. I couldn't answer that question. It's a contractual increase that they increase for their service. That's for us to be able to call them 24/7, any time of the day or night, if anything goes wrong.
I would think you'd ask them for details on that increase, why, you know,
Yeah, I can
salary or prices on equipment or what it is.
Yeah, I will get that clarified. I will email that to.
If it's gonna go up 2,000 every year, I'd like to know why, what
Yeah,
they're using it for.
definitely will. I will get clarification.
Okay.
And I can email it to you guys. Um, 11 is for our IT services, CM Geeks. 12 is for our email accounts through Microsoft. 13 is through e-dispatches, which is another system that the fire department utilizes as a secondary means of being alerted of emergency calls. It's pretty much a system that sends out whatever dispatch puts over the radio. It takes the first 30 seconds of that and sends it out to each firefighter or EMT's cell phone so that it can be replayed if they're in an area where there is no radio service. 14 is for all of their service and maintenance costs that fall under that. That was level funded. 15 is for our FirstNet air cards, which are in every single cruiser throughout the community, and some of our EMS ambulances have air cards in them as well. So that is the contract to provide wireless internet for all those vehicle or apparatuses. And that one did go up due to a couple of the communities adding vehicles to their fleet. Rutland, Hubbardston, and I believe Warren added vehicles to the system. 16 is the maintenance for my vehicle. And then 17, which is the new line item, is the annual maintenance for our electronic medical dispatching system that I mentioned earlier. After the grant provided the funding for that first year, the second year, the maintenance does fall on to the center. So that's where that increase. So that is all of the purchase services. Anybody have any questions before I move to the next one? All right, and then this is again, the summary of the entire operating budget for the dispatch center. The top part, which you already saw at the first slide. The second section where it says State 911 grant revenue, that is the money that we receive through the State 911 department for grant funding, which we utilize to offset the budget. Which we are currently, that is a temporary number. That will not go down. It could go up. So we won't know those figures until later on this year. So right now we're scheduled to receive $490,672 in grant funding from the state, which offsetting that to $724,634 to be assessed out to the 5 communities. And if you look at the bottom chart there, that is the actual communities assessments for FY22. And it varies right on the top. This is all calculated by population, and the percentage is made up from that.
How exactly is that calculated?
The percentage?
Yeah, because you say population, but how?
Yeah, it's utilizing the population and taking that number. It's very hard to explain. Don't know if I can pull up my spreadsheet.
Percentage. Take the total population, divide it by.
It's 8%.
Bear with me, I'm trying to get out of full screen here. I can't get out of here.
So Claire, I think your question is how did Mike come up with Barre being 20%, almost 20% of the assessment?
Yeah,
So the total population of all of the communities that are being serviced is 24,677. And out of that population, Barre is 4,887 of those people. So you can put it in like a fraction, 4,887 over to 24,677. And that's the percentage. And then that's.
so they do that for each one of the towns. There's nothing else involved.
Yeah, so it
with-
equals 100%. At the end of the day, it equals 100%.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if they had any other things that they take into consideration. Like sometimes when we get a percentage like that, there's other things added in.
We did discuss that by possibly not only population, but by 911 call volume.
Yeah.
But during those stakeholder meetings with town administrators, police chiefs, and fire chiefs, they all voted not to move down that route. This is with a more stable way of providing assessment to the communities.
Yeah, yeah,
Utilizing that 911 call volume, Barre could go up substantial amount and then next year drop down.
yeah, yeah, it would be up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is the last slide.
Okay.
With the state grant, the 911, is that a grant that's gonna be there every year? Or is that something that has a timeline, like 5 years, that goes away?
Note that grant, the support and incentive grant and the wireless direct grant have been there for, before I started this position, and I know it goes back prior to 2009, prior to that, and there is no discussion of that grant going away. Most of that money is received by 911 surcharges and fees. That's where this money comes from, and there's no talks of getting rid of the 911 surcharges and fees anytime soon.
Okay, great.
I don't know, Jess, if you want me to or not. I do have my capital stuff. There, I can explain what the dispatch center has and what we've been doing. I just don't know how to get out of the screen. So previous year, the center has not produced a capital budget. All capital items were brought to the State 911 Department under another grant, which is the development grant, which is a competitive grant throughout the state of Massachusetts. And that's how we funded our capital projects for the center. And that's where we received, I think to date from 2009, over $4 million to complete projects throughout the 5 communities. The new town administrator that we now have made each department produce a capital budget. Right now, my items are falling under free cash, but I don't foresee any of these items being approved due to some of the costs of these items. And then there's no current mechanism of how each community would contribute to that. So if Rutland was to approve this first one here, which is over 5 years, would accumulate almost to $2 million for new radios for all police and fire department personnel. How would each community contribute to that? And I don't think it would be fair if Rutland went ahead and approved this and then made us assess you guys on a secondary assessment to pick up a portion of Barry's cost. So in the near future, I will be talking with Jessica and the other town administrators for the other communities to try to figure out how we want to move forward with capital budgets for going forward. I will still attempt to try to fund these items under the State 911 Department's development grant, but it is competitive, and the state does have their priorities with newer dispatch centers that are forming. They take priority on their list at this point, and where we're at, where we're just upgrading and increasing service through our communities, we fall, I think, on bullet number 3. I can't remember who's in front of us besides the newly formed centers, but we fall under priority 3, and by that time, most of the money is dissolved and then when it gets to us. So some of our items do get approved. We've been approved every single year since FY 2009, all the way up to 21. For some items being towers, radio equipment, computer equipment for all our communities. So that's what we have, and I only have 4 items on my capital plan. You can see the first one, which is the radio equipment that is in dire need by all the police and fire departments in the 5 communities. Most of them are utilizing equipment that has passed the life expectancy and the end of life expectancy for these pieces of equipment by more than 5 to 7 years. So they really are utilizing equipment that they shouldn't. They're putting themselves at risk at that point as well. So that's number one on my list right now, is trying to replace all this equipment. But it does have a big price tag, as you can see. It would take 5 years of funding at $396,000 to replace every piece of equipment throughout 5 communities. My second item is just new monitors for some of the dispatch consoles. Again, where most of the dispatchers utilize, I think, between 8 to 15 different screens that they have to toggle from, and having 2 to 3 small 21-inch screens is kind of hard to navigate through those number of screens quickly to provide services to the citizens and responders. So this just gives them more real estate and better working environment. The third one is the Citrix hardware gateway. What this will allow us to do is to comply with federal standards and make us FIPS compliant. Just standards that are set forth by the federal government as well as the state government. Right now we're utilizing a secondary system which is called Parallels. That's what Barre Fire utilizes, as well as all our other member communities, to access the CAD system remotely, because they have no direct tie to it, because it is a network deemed piece of system. So they all have to remote in, and we're utilizing Parallels, which is not FIPS compliant. This gateway would allow us to provide a secure connection to all the users on the other end, protecting all the information that's going back and forth. And then the last item is a more radio equipment for the towers. It's called Tactical Channel. It's a secondary radio frequency for when large incidents are occurring. Currently, right now, we have a regional fire frequency, which all the calls get dispatched out over on. And then as soon as they arrive on scene, we move them to a secondary channel. And currently, right now, we only have one tactical channel. So when there is multiple big scenes going on, it's hard to move those companies to a different channel without disrupting other incidences. So this just allow more flexibility and another channel to move the fire department or police department to while they're operating on scene. So again, like I said, I'm going to apply for all this through the development grant and hopefully see what comes from the state. Anybody have any questions?
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Hey, Mike, I actually have
Thank
one
you.
question.
Yep.
I was just thinking about this more recently, and I hadn't thought about it when we had our conversation a couple weeks ago, but I was just wondering if the center, I was surprised to learn that this is like the first time you guys put together a capital improvement plan. But I was wondering what, if you guys had a financial forecast for the next 5 years, so we can try and be a little bit more proactive on our end in the planning for budgeting.
Sure. I do not have that currently made up right now. We did restructure our budget this year differently from the previous years. So I can definitely put that together and send that over to you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah. It's
Is
clear.
that it, Jess?
Claire's still waiting.
That's it.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Is this where?
Are we ready?
Yeah.
The microphone's up on the table, so I think it might help if you.
And the camera?
The camera's right there.
Need a chair.
Thank you. So I guess somebody's gonna get my.
It's fine,
Oh,
don't
that's
worry.
okay.
It's all right.
All right, so with this budget, we're basically looking at a level funded budget that comes in about 2% under last year's budget for a variety of reasons. It's pretty self-explanatory. I don't know if you have any particular questions, but the things that pop out, the differences, you see a major reduction in contractual allowances, and contractual allowances are they're the clothing allowances. It's what we are required to pay each officer towards replacement and maintenance of their uniforms. And what we've done is we've taken out, every year I ask you for money for that possibility of having to hire an officer and we have to outfit them. But we've used COVID money to create a supply closet. So we're ahead for next year, so we don't have to ask for
Ooh.
the money.
Good.
As far as tuition goes, we also have not asked for, we're trying not to plan out too much in the way of academies. We know we're gonna have one. We have some tuition increases, just as naturally some of the things we belong to have gone up in price, but if we get into an area where we need money for an academy, I guess I'm just gonna I'm gonna come back and ask you for that money. But we're trying not to tie the money up if we don't have to. I know we have one academy next fall, maybe with the whole year, that's all we'll need. Who's to say, right? So, in the next year, we're trying to hire an academy-trained full-timer. We have one
Cool.
position open right now to offset that cost. And then salaries, we simply have some newer officers that cost less than a couple of not really not old, but just
Yeah.
higher salary officers that
Past officers.
did leave. So that's that's how it works out this year. And then, of course, as they stay with the department, they'll go up, and that will disappear. So that's basically the budget, and everything else is pretty much across the board. We have a little bit of an increase in supplies, and that's just the cost of doing business. And we have a little bit of an increase in purchase services, and that has to do with radio repairs. We had to budget more money for radio repairs, and everything's going digital now. So
Yeah.
the police officers buy a law book, field books, and there's about 5 of them that they buy. So they don't buy them every year because they're expensive, but it's the reference manual for all the statutes. Now that's going online and you buy it by agency. So, and it's $650 a year, so we had to increase it to account for that, because pretty soon those books are gonna become a thing of the past and everyone's
Right.
looking on their phone,
Right.
scrolling through their phone for all of the information. So it actually saves the department money, but it's not like we can pass it on individually because it's a lump sum. In other words, the officers were buying it out of their uniform allowance, so. At any rate, that's why you see that increase and those increases, but we tried to keep it to where we're not asking for too much. We were in a contract negotiation year, so we know that when that's over with, unless they get a 0 raise, and I'm telling you, it's probably not gonna happen.
Is that, I mean, that seems like it's taken a long time.
Yeah.
So that's not done yet, right?
No, it's not. It's,
Oh, okay.
we wish it was.
Yeah.
But darn the luck. So we're still swinging away at that, and
Okay.
when it's over, it'll be reasonable. I feel pretty certain, but you'll see that.
No, that's one question, because I thought last year it was ongoing. There was some money somewhere else in case it got set, so it's not even set then for this
No,
year.
we don't put money in, because then that's a leverage point for the unions to say, well, we already put money
Yeah,
aside,
we've
so you gotta
already
give
done
it to
it.
us.
Right.
So, no, they didn't start negotiating until January. They started, January?
It was, no, October. I wanna say we started.
I'm
in
sorry, I
October.
reached out to them in January and asked them to start negotiations. They didn't get ahead of COVID, and that's what slowed us down.
Oh, last January, yeah.
I reached out to them We could, you know, I feel like we could have been done if we had done this before COVID.
Mm.
And then, bam,
Yeah.
right? So
How often do you have a meeting?
the statutory answer is in a reasonable amount of meetings in a reasonable amount of time, and whenever there's a question,
Is
we answer it.
it working out once a month or once every 5
It's-
months?
It
or-
started we started trying to do every 2 weeks,
Oh,
and then that went for a while, and now I would say once a month is about
Okay.
where we're at. Because we've done all of the,
Mm.
you know, we've
Yeah.
done the back and forth.
Yeah.
Now we're settling on the finals.
mhm, okay.
How many officers in total do we have in town?
So we're budgeted for 9 full-time
Okay.
and 6 part-time. But we're down in part-timers. It's, we hired good part-timers, they leave to become full-timers somewhere else. We've had a couple of full-timers leave. It's the nature of the beast in Massachusetts is, in every department statewide is the same problem. The current climate has slowed down recruitment,
Mm.
and officers are leaving. They're just leaving, and so there's openings all over the state. It's hard to keep staffed, so we are down 1 full-timer we're hiring for, and we're down 3 part-timers. And it's, a couple of years ago, that was bountiful, and now it's not. Yeah, and the part-timers keep us afloat. Without them, we can't meet budget at all. So.
Yeah.
But we do hire good part-timers, and then they get
Yeah,
sucked up by
Too
another
good, huh?
department. So, yeah.
So you think you'll have trouble filling the position, chief?
No, I don't.
No?
I don't think we're gonna have trouble filling it, but I anticipate that 2 positions will turn over because if you're a young officer, there's more money in some departments, and the grass is greener, and they're restless, they're anxious, they're not settled. The littlest thing moves them across the state to try something, but they got a buddy in another department, so,
Yeah.
and we've had that happen. So we're focused on keeping, 6 or 7 people always, and we like to attack and keep all 9, but it's just, nobody can do that.
Yeah.
So
That's
if we can keep it to where we maintain 7 regular officers, then I feel like we're way ahead of the game.
okay.
So,
What do you find is the average length of time a new officer stays in Barre?
So, well, we make them sign a contract for 3 years, where they have to pay back their training costs. Those that haven't, so that's a recent union agreement, and the union was all for it. So if you didn't sign it, the wind blows and you go, so I'd say 2 years. But the guys that sign it, and we haven't had any of them leave yet, and the first group is coming to the end of the 3 years. Really what it boils down to promotions. As soon as you have a promotion, somebody that didn't get promoted leaves.
Mm.
Because they feel like, well, now it's gonna be forever before I get a chance again.
Mm.
And somebody will say, hey, you know what, such and such is retiring in, Easton or something like that, and then so if we can keep an officer for 3 years, we've made our money back. If we keep them for 5, we're way ahead of the game. But again, they make their move at about the 2-year mark when they're restless. We have 5 officers, myself included, who are stable, and we think a 6th officer who's very stable and won't be leaving, just bought a house in town. So that's 6 out of 9, so we're moving in the right direction. I don't mean to lean back, this chair is kind of
Loosey-goosey.
kind of loose, yeah. But that's way better than we used to, when I first got here. I think the average time of service here was like 1 year and 3/4.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's too
Yeah.
hard a deal.
Yep.
Hmm.
So we're doing better and better.
From a community
Chief.
perspective, sorry, Claire, do you want to go?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. Can you explain the specialty stipends and how they work?
Yeah, so, and we actually don't have much in the way of specialty stipends. If you get one of those collateral duties like armorer, so firearms instructor, field training officer, then you get a stipend, which it's paid, I think it's going to be paid every 6 months in halves, but that's a duty above and beyond negotiated with the union, so it's in their contract. So in order for us to have a field training officer, we must pay them that extra amount of money. In order to train people that come out of the academy, we must have field training officers, so we're locked into that. And the same thing with firearms. We tend to outsource training for some of the stuff so that we don't have to have too many stipends.
Yeah,
Like self-defense, for example, we don't pay that stipend. we bring somebody in to train, but firearms would be ridiculously expensive if we sent everybody somewhere else to train, so we maintain a firearms instructor. And again, with the FTOs, we absolutely have to have them to train new officers, so, but by comparison to what some other agencies carry, we carry very few stipends.
Did you get
Okay,
something
and then
done?
the other thing I wondered about was the contractual obligations.
In the contract, if you were to break it apart and read it, you would find that there, over the years, they negotiated quite a few pay increases for working holidays. And we will fall behind it. We can't cover that with our overtime budget, so we have to budget a separate line item to meet those obligations that are in the contract. The example would be something like they can get paid like 4 times their rate of pay for working Christmas. And that's been in the contract since before I came here. So that meets those holiday obligations.
Okay. On the education stipend for 2021, you haven't spent anything on that account?
I think it's all been paid out now, hasn't it?
The last report I got, it wasn't.
It sure was 100%.
Yeah, 100% paid out. That pays out early in the year.
On the one dated March 11th.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's 100%.
Yep, that goes quick.
did you get some
I
new
looked at
fire?
so many numbers today. And then, while I'm looking at this, you have your chief and deputy chief salaries on one line.
Yes.
Can we please have it broken out in your budget?
Well, you can.
We always have.
There's a reason why I don't do that. It's not, I don't like to show my salary and the deputy chief's salary individually to the officers beneath us for a variety of reasons. So I lump them together, knowing that you know what they really are and that the paperwork that the town administrator puts forward does contain them broken out. I just don't think that it's professionally a good idea for me to advertise. They can look in the book, but it brings about a lot of comments that just aren't helpful. You know, how come? the
Why would
chief-
they see your budget sheet?
They always see my budget sheet. They always see it. It's on my board. The whole budget's written out on the board, and they pay strict attention.
Well-
When we're building the budget.
Well, somehow we're gonna have to
Well,
figure out
you
to
have
break it out on our budget sheets for the finance committee
Yes, no.
because they have always been there.
The town administrator has the numbers, and that's how it'll come to you.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll have to come up with something like that.
Yeah, yes.
But, then I have another question. For 2021, for the chief and the deputy chief, you have a figure of 165,086. Now, the money that was budgeted in 2021 was 168,326.
So what happened was I got a recalculated number from Heather Monroe. And she provided me with the new number, and that's the number I put in.
Well, the number that has to go in there on Jean's expenditure report that she gives us, she has the original budget that was voted on at the town meeting.
Mhm.
And her number in there for those two are 168,326.
Right, for last year.
And that's what
right?
has to go
Well,
in
that's fine. That's
for
fine.
2021.
I understand there were a number of figures that were slightly altered during the COVID recalculations, so I simply went with what she provided, but I understand from talking with Jessica that there are a
Yeah.
number of numbers that have to be, as you're saying, they have to be printed, with the original numbers.
Yep.
So
Right,
we'll certainly
right.
do that. Certainly do that.
And the other one that was off was the salaries account too.
Right, that's the same thing.
384648,
Right.
it should be.
So we'll go back to that, just those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those numbers need to be changed on there. I think that was all.
Okay.
Did you get some?
The
new
only other thing I
firearms
wanted
this
to
year?
ask you is if you've got your cruiser yet.
Comes in next week.
Oh,
Oh,
Good
wow,
deal.
that's good.
Yes, it is, but of course, it'll take 2 weeks to outfit, but yeah, it comes in next week.
what did you get, Chief?
Charger.
You did?
Yep.
How's the truck working out?
That is great. That is really
I was
great.
impressed with it, but
Yeah, that's,
good.
Yep.
And how are the breakdowns with the new process? Are we having more vehicles ready to go now?
our vehicle, yeah, we're, yes, we are. I mean, we have 2 vehicles, as you'll see, that have tremendously high mileage, that, well, one barely, you hear this every year, one barely runs, but we're getting to a point where the maintenance is good.
Good.
We have good solid vehicles now, they're all police package vehicles. Remember, we had 3 vehicles that weren't police packages.
Yeah, right.
So we're so far ahead of the game that
Great,
way. Yeah, we're
Great,
so far
glad
ahead.
to hear
The
that.
equipment is really good inside of them, so we're doing well.
Wonderful.
I don't have any complaints.
Good.
Chief Carpone, what the dispatch folks out there in Rutland, that capital budget they were going through, could you explain how that works? So you don't have to pay for communication equipment on our,
Oh, no.
Yeah, there's
So,
gonna be a big incentive.
I mean, he was talking about
Yeah.
capital communication for ambulances, so all
Well,
our
we're talking about
ambulances.
radios, right?
Yeah,
And
for the
they
capital.
don't, they do not give us radios. I don't anticipate them giving us radios.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's not in your budget, equipment like that isn't in your.
So we end up having to repair and replace our own radios.
Mm.
And they're super, super expensive. So we're carrying, we have, the administrators carry a radio that costs about $3,500. And we really should be carrying radios that cost about $5,000 or $6,000. The line officers carry radios that cost about $1,100. They're really not adequate, but I think what it is our ability in a crisis to communicate with other agencies is just not there. It's like a one-trick pony. And then what the patrol officers carry, we have dead spots all over Barre. The real reason is because dispatch is not putting up the towers they promised that they were gonna put up.
Right.
If they would do that, the towers go a long way to making the radios more usable. It's like, cell phone service, right? So they're not doing their end. That, don't get me wrong, I really like Director Moriarty, it's not that, but, and then they do not supply us with radios, and that's been my contention since I got off the boat from Connecticut. I can't believe that we have to buy our own radios, but the long and short of it is, it's not really regional dispatch, it's Rutland dispatch, and we all, rent space. It's like
Right, you're right.
we're like, at barbershop when we rent a chair. And they're trying to increase the number of chairs so that it brings their costs down,
Yeah.
so they can have a prime dispatch center to service Rutland.
Exactly.
And no matter how good of people they are and how much I like them, that is the fact. And so that radio, I mean, for Barre to get the radios that it needs, $250,000.
And those would be digital, is that the difference?
Yeah, well, so, yes, but, so you get to that platform. Motorola builds a platform. And we have that platform with the radios that some of the radios we carry, but
Okay.
then it's just the difference between options. And so how many channels, how many different departments can we reach their band on?
Okay,
And
sure.
so they're all capable of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So it's digital, non-digital, that was an argument for 1997, 98. We're all there now.
Okay,
Now,
that's what I thought. They
do we
put
have
new
radios that will talk to 7 agencies, and are your extra channels, because we have all these extra channels, but they're not really usable because they're weaker. For lack of a better term, you can go to, I talk to you, and you can't, and you don't talk to me, but now all of a sudden we lose the tower. Now we're talking to each other,
Oh, really?
and it's based on how close we are. And we want to have radios that I can talk to you and you can talk to me off of a tower, no matter how far apart we are, and that's the more expensive, we don't need 100 channels, we need to have like 15 really good channels, so we can talk to the state police and all of the
Right,
agencies in our region. And we have Warren.
Yeah.
As part of
Yeah.
our just,
Yeah.
it serves us no purpose,
Yeah.
so. The day that, I know he tries, but the day that they supply us with radios, Let's have cake, because I don't expect that to happen. It's just so expensive, and then
Well-
every new town that comes in is gonna want a batch of radios. You know,
Yes.
and again, 40
Update.
radios is $250,000, conservatively. And that would be for us in the fire
So
department. That would
he's
be-
putting in a capital budget though for that, and they're debating
So-
on how to share it with the
Well,
towns.
yeah,
It's
so
so
what
much
you
money.
saw tonight from him, like I mentioned, this is the first time they put together a capital budget, which is pretty, for the amount of equipment that they need to run a dispatch, the expenses associated with it, that's pretty outstanding to just come up with a capital improvement plan this year. And for the past couple of years, it's always been, we'll apply for the state 911, or we'll apply for these grants, we'll apply for these grants. And if I came to you guys and said, you know, we're just gonna keep applying for grants to get cars and ambulances, and you guys would be like, okay, that's a good idea, thank you for applying, but what's the backup?
Yeah.
And
To
so
your
they don't,
question, that was to your question.
yeah, so they haven't had a backup plan ever.
Which is sell more seats, but
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, so that's, I think that's the biggest, one of the bigger issues we have at
Seems
hand is
like
that
all the
our.
chairs aren't quite the same, some are a little.
It's interesting.
well, when the chair is on the other side of Worcester, what, you know, there's the concept of regional dispatch was supposed to be departments that would respond together. And it doesn't do us any good if they're handling an emergency, you know, and tying up the air, so, and it has nothing to do with Ocam or Hubbardston or Barre. That just defeats the whole concept. You know?
Well, Warren's on a different frequency and everything.
Yeah, we don't hear them,
Right.
but the
Oh,
problem,
yeah, obviously they're dealing with it.
the problem with us is it ties, you know, so.
The
something really-
dispatchers themselves?
Yeah, it ties them up, they're, you know, it's longer for us to get the stuff that we need.
Okay.
But you have situations, and they don't happen all the time, but
Mhm.
say, you know, the bomb cyclone that we had, that shut the town down for 3 days. That happens, and we're all working together off of the same dispatch, but they have the same crisis down there, and they have 4 or 5 towns that they've got to deal with. Not that they're dispatching them, but they've got them all in their towns, and
Mm-hmm.
so now you've got 2 major areas that
Yes.
they're dealing with, and we really needed it to be one major area that they're dealing with, our area. And Rutland and Barre, we don't even interact. Not that
Yeah,
we're just a little too far apart to do mutual aid.
right.
So, you know, the problem is, we're waiting while the dispatchers are trying to handle too many unrelated incidences.
Yeah, well, when they announced that they were gonna have Warren, that's what I was trying to figure out how it was gonna happen, work,
And you know, and tomorrow they might have another,
Yeah.
they might have another town somewhere way out there.
And we don't, Jessica, we don't have any say in whether they,
It's not part of the agreement?
oh,
No.
When does that agreement come back up? Like,
because I could see some big,
I would have to check what the
Yeah.
agreement terms are. I mean, there has been efforts to
Yeah.
change how it's run. So
Right.
a town like Barre would get, or all of the towns would get sick. There's
Yeah.
definitely been, this hasn't been something that we're like happily just agreeing to.
Mm.
I thought it was odd that, like, Rutland dictates their wages for the regional dispatch, and none of the other towns have a say in
right,
that aspect.
yeah.
Well, the dispatchers make more there than our police officers make.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, you're asking reasons why sometimes a young officer will up and leave here, because they come walking and go, chief, Rutland dispatcher's making more than me, I gotta go somewhere else. And it's killing us. And then the town of Barre is
Yeah,
not really needing to do this, but they're paying a wage to the dispatchers that's killing us.
Yeah. From a question I wanted to ask you earlier, like, from a community perspective, what do you think for our town is one of the biggest, like, public safety, like, risks or concerns?
You know, Barre is a town, first of all, we don't have too many domestics, which domestics being the single most dangerous call that we go on. We have a good number of medicals, which I would say, absent COVID, aren't necessarily dangerous to us. But when we have a domestic, they're usually ramped all the way up. I.e., you know, we had a homicide. So, domestics where, so a lot of people would say Stetson, but we've really
Yeah,
calmed
yeah,
down
it
the
seemed like
amount of violence. But even though we don't go to too many domestics and we don't face too many kids wandering off with axes, there are such severe calls when they come in. You know, I came from a town that had, 10 times as many of everything, but a third or less the number of seriously dangerous calls. So it's still domestics, and you know, it could be something from one of the kids, but it's not generally. It's these domestics
Yeah.
with weapons. You know,
Yeah, weapons, yeah,
with weapons.
exactly.
What about, because I know it was brought up at selectmen's meeting a while back, like speed. Is there equipment that the department is going to ask for to try to curb, speeding throughout the town?
Speeding.
Yeah.
We just got the sign.
Speedy.
Which is equipped with radar, and we just actually they just came out to train us on the data collection and the radar portion of it. We're picking up another laser gun, so we have two. We used to have none. It's LiDAR, but you know it is laser. Every one of our cars is now mounted with moving radar. We had a radar system that was a defunct company, and it just didn't really work. We've changed the way we mount the radar so that it gives the guys a better ability to monitor from the side of the road. So we've done all these things, and we have opened up to, we get a lot of complaints now, and we've given everybody a number or an email address, and we get a lot, and we send people down. So I think we're taking our best shot at it. As long as people keep making the complaints, we'll keep going after those areas.
I gotta make some calls on
We
it.
just try to keep a record, but equipment-wise, we're doing well. That sign, we're waiting to see how that's gonna.
What,
Is
what,
that
mobile
the
sign?
Is that the one out in front of the Legion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's got radar in it, and it's got a data collector. So
Oh,
not only
yeah.
can we track how many people are speeding and all of that, when somebody gives a complaint, we can start saying, well, you know what, we'll deploy a guy during these hours because the graph shows us that there really is no speeding here, here, and here. And sometimes we'll find there's way more speeding than we thought, or really not. Maybe there was just a week. So we're going to use that. That was COVID money, and that was really well spent COVID money. So we just got that rolled out.
Well, you can put that sign in my driveway anytime you want. Especially in the summertime, you're gonna get plenty.
But we really do keep
Coming out of
people
town.
send in complaints. We have a tracking system. We make sure that the officers sign out and actually do an assignment there. We record it. We get to see what enforcement they've taken. So we really, we encourage people to contact us
Okay.
with specific complaints, because
Good.
it's better than just going out and sitting really the same old place. all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Or out in the woods.
Well, I read on social you got a grant as well, right?
So we do, we got so Barre's known as a safe town as far as traffic accidents go. We don't have enough bad accidents to qualify for this particular type of grant, but they went ahead and decided this year they were gonna give every town an option at getting the money versus just pushing it to the places that have the worst fatalities. So we got, it's a 5-part, so we get a LiDAR gun out of it, and we get 5 different deployments. We did one for drunk driving and impaired driving during Christmas. We're getting ready to go into speed, distracted driving, and then we'll have another OUI and I believe another speed as it gets, and then it ends in September. So those are dedicated grants. And yeah, that's great. We didn't have the opportunity for that for years.
Okay, that's good.
So good.
Don't come up on Spring Hill Road, the road's so bad, you
Yeah,
can't speed
exactly.
anyway, so
Yeah. It's
so
I'll save you that time.
You were asking about the guns?
Yeah,
Yeah, so we do. We got our sidearms in.
yeah,
So now, I think we have 2 officers that still remain to be qualified in them, but, so they're here, we have them. That's, I think, a huge improvement.
what'd you get?
Colt 45, 1911 model.
Oh, okay, good. It's a cannon.
It's a cannon. What are we likely to shoot at around here? A bear? A
You can
moose?
shoot through the woods, good.
Yeah. Right. So, we have firepower equal to what we are gonna face.
Good.
Those guns, the guns that we had, they've lived past their life, and these guns should have a much, almost an indefinite life, because of the way, I don't know how much you deal with Colt 45s, but it sounds like a lot, you know guns.
Yeah.
So if you replace the springs and, at certain intervals, you replace the innards, the gun can go on forever, so. We also
So
upgraded,
do those stay with the department, or do they go with the guy when he
No.
goes in
I
3
mean,
years?
on down the road, you might give the chief his retirement gun or something. No, they,
Good kid.
no, they stay, and
Yeah.
it was, you know, it was a long road to get them because COVID occurred and shut down production. So we just got them within the last month.
Good.
So those ones were paid out of the article from 2019?
So yeah, the article for 29, we got the article, they were based on a 6-hour 45 caliber. We knew we wanted to go to 45 caliber because we actually have a lot of bear calls, and it's tough to be out there and have, you know, and be between, your shotguns in the car, and you're here and there's 3 bears. So, so we knew that that's what we needed, but we were gonna go with the SIG 45. And then SIG, that's what we priced it for, and then that model went out of production. And the problem with the model going out of production is, so does the holster. So if you buy it, goes out of production, you start getting, it starts becoming difficult for the next officer comes in, how am I gonna get a holster for it? You know, 10 years down the road, you're just not gonna be able to get them. So then we started to notice an awful lot of models were going out of production. And so then we fell back and said, we have to find a gun that we can rely on, it's gonna stay in production for the, expected life of the gun, which is how we ended with the 1911 model. So that cost more than we had budgeted for. So we, basically scrimped and saved and cut corners here and there so that we could come up with that extra money. So we had to come up with a little bit extra above and beyond the warrant.
Okay.
We were able to do it, so.
But you get a good stable unit.
Yeah.
Gotta have that.
So we feel pretty good about that. No complaints.
Good.
So any more questions about the budget?
No? No?
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you untangling that mess over the years.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you can talk
Thank
about
you.
your capital request.
So our capital request is simple, 1 car.
We figured that.
Right.
I like
and
that.
Yeah, simple is good.
So we need an SUV to replace the Chevy that we have, which is a civilian model. And it's at about, I want to say 148,000 miles right now. And the Caprice is going next week. We're selling, we should be able to get some money for that. And then our next car is the first car that was purchased the year I got here, that's at 96. So we finally are putting a gap, some space between those high numbers.
Yeah.
So we're looking to replace the SUV this year.
Okay.
So what would you get?
A Durango. So I'm driving the Durango, and
Okay.
it has done well, very well. It's got, a civilian car is higher, right? So these are a little bit lower, so even with 4-wheel drive, they're not gonna do as well as maybe your own car would do.
Yeah.
The pickup truck does. That's as high as,
Yeah.
but that's because pursuit models have to be lower. But it's still very, very good, and it gets me everywhere I need to go. To be honest, I got stuck once, but
Well, you would have got stuck with almost anything then.
just once, but, and it has it handles very well, it's safe on, I don't take it like at high speeds or anything, but it handles the curves better than SUVs generally do, because it's got police suspension, so to speak. So we think it's good. I've given the guys a shot at, riding in it, driving it a little bit. Everybody seems to like it, so we think that, and then the price is right.
Good, excellent.
So, that's what we're
Very
asking
good.
for.
Good.
Thank you very
Any
much,
other-
Chief, we appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Good job.
That's what I wish you would-
Okay, now it's Jessica's turn. Do you have any COVID-19 updates for us, Jessica?
The only update that I have is I mentioned, I think last time, that there was some federal funding that was in the talks. And it looks like Barre could be getting $1.1 million from this new stimulus package that was passed by the federal government. I do not know the provisions right now of
Right.
what we can spend that money on.
Right.
I've heard that it's gonna be a lot more broad than what the CARES Act allowed us to spend the funds on. And so I don't wanna say too much more, but that's what I know.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe we can buy a fire truck.
Let's see, I think, we could all come up with $1.1 million worth of things that we can.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
we can spend it.
Yeah.
And what's the opening of the regional school plan for Quabbin Regionals? I hadn't heard anything on it.
I haven't heard anything either. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if there's any.
The gossip
Yeah.
I was
on
gonna say.
social media is March 29th.
Okay.
They're doing so I believe, we submitted a survey, because my son's at Ruggles. So there was a survey submitted by the parents, and I believe that was due either Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then they're presenting their plan to the committee. So I think by the end of this week, they're supposed to have a plan approved. But I mean, Ruggles has been full-time, just with an early release compared to normal since September, which we're grateful for. I'm grateful for.
Sure.
And hopefully they can get, I saw that they did their vaccination clinic. My wife, she teaches out in Holden, so they did theirs out there too. So I think everyone's kind of heading in the right direction.
And how is the vaccine update? Is Rutland handling our Barre people?
Yep, they still are.
Okay. I hadn't heard how those set up. I wondered if you could maybe give us all a copy. I don't really know. I don't remember seeing it, of the payroll step schedule.
Okay.
I don't think I've seen it. Have you seen it, Ted or Brian?
No, never saw it.
No.
Yeah, I can share that
Yeah.
with you guys right now.
Yeah, so that we can know when they're talking about they're on a certain step, what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And just the Rutland Dispatch, that capital plan that they had, we didn't get that today in our,
No,
had they sent
I think
that to
because
you
that's,
differently?
right now, it's a very much a
Wish list.
idea. I don't know if I would call it a plan yet.
Right.
Because there's no, they have things, I can say I want to spend $360,000 every single year, but how do we fund it?
Yeah.
That's the key part that's missing, and so until I see how they are gonna plan to fund it, until I have that conversation with them on what our capacity is or what they want our capacity to be, it's very much a loose plan. It's more so, this is what we're seriously gonna need from now until FY '26. But,
Yeah.
Well, they've done it all with grants before, so that's kind of what they were,
Yeah.
basing their whole business plan on,
right,
Yeah.
was the grants, so. And the cost to us is gonna be, I mean, we went to it originally to pay for the radio updates and everything, which they did. But now apparently those radios they're like computers, I guess. You gotta update them every 10 years,
Yeah.
Now, Jessica, have you received any, like Rob gave us all the grants that he received and what he hopes to do?
yeah.
Have you received any from any other departments?
No, actually, so, hold on, let me see. I will share with you what I have for grants that I've pulled together. I don't think this is an exhaustive list, there could be some missing, but
Yeah.
this is what I have as far as the grants that we have. I don't know why that's a little blurry, but, luckily this year, despite everything that's been going on, the department heads have been able to pull together their own resources and apply for a number of grants. Some of them are very competitive. some of them are not competitive, and basically if you put in an application, you'll receive the funds. So here is what I have as what we've received for grants this year, which totals to $306,225. And some of them, like the chief was talking about, the LiDAR guns or the CCTV system, which will put cameras in the police station. You know, those are tangible things that we've gotten, but then there's other things like the Small Communities Grant for the Open Space and Recreation Plan and the Regional Rapid Plan Grant, which is for an economic development consultant. Those are a little bit less tangible, and those are, you know, opportunities for us to plan for the town's future. So I think we have a good range of grants so far, and you know, we continue to apply for them as we come across them.
Yeah.
I think that's a good, you know, definitely something I've noticed, especially between the fire chief and the police chief. Not to discount the work of any other department that's received a grant, but I think they are very, very proactive with searching for grants, for thinking outside of the box, and applying for these grants.
Great.
The other thing I was going to ask you was, have you gotten any other capital requests?
So I started putting together a capital request plan based off of, you know, loosely based off of what our capital improvement plan was. Again, as we've had this discussion before, you can make a really nice plan, but if you can't follow through with it, things fall behind. And so we've noticed that on the capital improvement plan, like Chief Rogowski mentioned, he's supposed to be asking for a fire truck this year, but he already knows, he's already backed up from the previous year on what he needed to request. So far, this list actually has changed as of today. The police vehicle replacement that Chief Carbone was just talking about is actually going to be $55,000 because he's requesting an SUV this year. A sedan is more, you know, in the lower range, closer to $45,000. So I was just going based off of what was allocated last year. And then when I had my discussion with him today, he said he actually needs probably closer to $55,000. Similar to the Chief Rogowski's request, because he's also requesting an SUV, so they're going to be similar in price. And then I have been getting a lot of reports that there are shingles coming off of the Old Town Hall on the Common. That was in our capital improvement plan for the next fiscal year. This fiscal year for the Board of Selectmen, we were supposed to request a design plan to reconfigure the offices in the Henry Woods building. But I think that this is more important because it has come up to my attention more recently. I think with the massive windstorms that we've had, there's been a little bit more damage caused to the Old Town Hall, and we want to be proactive on this to make sure that we don't get any, you know, nobody gets hurt. One, we don't want anybody to get hurt from a flying shingle. And, and two, if we have, you know, too much damage to the roof, that kind of makes us susceptible for other water damage or other kinds of issues. So that is what was in the capital improvement plan as the estimated cost. I don't have any formal, I haven't gone out and gotten any quotes for it yet, but that's definitely something I'm going to be doing here pretty soon, is getting an idea on how much that's actually going to cost, because I think that $35,000 might be conservative. And then the regional school district reached out to me today, and they need it's called a combi oven. I don't know exactly, it has something to do with preparing the students' lunches, but they requested that, it's for Ruggles Lane, and they requested that it had been replaced back in 2019 at a special town meeting, and that didn't go through, and now part of the oven is actually completely broken and non-functional, so it's a little bit more of a priority at this point. and that'll cost about $15,000. So this is a little bit out of date right now.
Yeah.
That number went up a little bit. And also, the fire station feasibilities study is something that Chief Rogowski didn't mention, but right now we are in the process of picking a firm to do the feasibility study for a new fire station, which is a sore need. I don't know how many of you have been down on School Street and seen the fire department, but it's in really, really bad shape. It's been a project that's been put off for a long time, and you know, the first step in that project process is getting a feasibility study to see how much it's gonna cost, where it can go, and all of that happy jazz. But in order for us to even make that step, we're gonna need at the most $45,000. Like I said, we haven't negotiated with any designers yet, but the not to exceed price was $45,000, so.
Yep. That was all that I had on the list here. Does anyone on the Finance Committee have anything else to bring up?
I did.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah,
Alright.
you go first.
So, I have a big mouth, and I thought a lot after we talked the last time. And I reached out to Claire because I wasn't quite sure what is in the Finance Committee's wheelhouse and what is not. And some departments are better at explaining what they need and why they need it and selling it than others. So Chief Rogowski and Chief Carbone are very good at really giving us a good picture of what they need.
Yep.
And I think it sells itself, and it's gonna get support, whether from us, the selectmen, or a town meeting. The highway department is not as thorough in their descriptions, and again, their equipment isn't as shiny, you know, I mean, so, but we can't ignore them forever. So one of the things I was thinking is, at some point, you know, one of the points Jason made is that parts are becoming more expensive, some things are harder to replace. Is there any value in possibly speaking to the town mechanic to see which vehicles are spending more time with him than on the road, and which ones he's really having a hard time fixing? Because if he can't fix it, at some point it's gonna be a do or die situation. So I think he's gonna have the most insight into how much time and money either he's wasting or how little value we're actually getting out of a piece of equipment, whether it be a sidewalk plow, a loader, a chainsaw, or anything in between. That was the first thing I was thinking about. The second thing I was thinking about was, I really like Jean's report on the tax money that is expected and coming in. And I think Bob, again, also sells it when talking about the ambulance receipts, how they work. But, you know, I think that we might need to hear from the collector too. What are we billing out?
Absolutely.
Quarterly, yearly? What's still sitting out there?
Yep.
What's sitting out there from last year and is still collectible? What's the collection policy? How far do we push? Water and sewer is the same way. I mean, are we writing off thousands of dollars every year, or literally just letting it sit there? Because again, we're gonna put a roof on a town hall and you need $100,000 loader. It, you know, yes, $100 water bill from 3 years ago might not mean anything, but if that house gets sold and that lien's not on there, we just lost $100. You know, like Bob was saying, people move and there's no forwarding address, you can't track them down. And yes, a collection agency takes 30% off the top, but if you get 70 and not 100 or nothing, it's worth paying the collection agency. That's it, that's my, you know, I think, you know, we get to see the expense side, if we're not seeing what the real revenue numbers are.
Exactly,
how
especially at this
can we-
point, because at this point, we're trying to figure what, I mean, are we wasting our time looking at capital equipment, or, you know, we need numbers right
And it
now.
doesn't have to be like, you know, nitty-gritty detail, but if you say excise tax, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
excise tax bills went out at the beginning of March. All right, we billed $50,000 in excise tax bills. As of April 1st, you've gotten $25,000. Well, then
Right.
somebody better be pressing for the other 25. Yes, I know that I'll admit, last year I paid mine late and I paid all the fees associated with it. It was my own fault. You know, I'm sitting here to answering me, but oh my God, I paid my bill late. But you know, same thing, you know, again, is it coming in April?
Yeah.
Are people not paying it? And not to be a jerk, but a lot of people in town just got somewhere between $1,400 that they weren't expecting and $7,000, you know? not that I wanna take, you know, cause yes, there's rent and food and everything else, but at the same time, I want our $100. I've done collections for years, I'm the jerk who calls your business and says, I'll shut you off. I mean, I used to staff nursing homes and I had people call and go, but we have a flu outbreak and I have no staff. Well, then I pick up a check for $10,000 Thursday and you can have staff for the weekend. You know? Then I go in and that's what I do and then hope I didn't get mugged on the way out. So,
Well, Eric and I went to see Jason last week and had a really good meeting with him. We did impress on him about capital. We told him that he didn't get anything last year, and he better get in line, and he said he was gonna. So we may have to do a little more discussion about that, Eric, but I was very happy with the meeting and the fact about what's kind of going on down there, you know.
and some people are better at selling themselves
Oh,
than
yeah.
others. I mean,
Right.
again, you know, I'd rather have somebody who knows how to use the equipment than can sell me on why he needs it. I mean, but at the
Yeah.
same time, you know,
That's true.
Like what-
it might not be a strength, but we need information to be able to make those decisions.
Yeah,
And if it's the mechanic who says,
Well-
I'm literally going to have to put duct tape and Gorilla Glue on that for it to work another day, then that's the piece that needs to be.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully he shares that, I mean, he asked, you know, he shares that with the mechanic. He talks to the mechanic
Hope
every
so.
day, I'm sure. Yeah, you would hope, you know.
Well, one of the concern I was gonna bring up actually was also related to the highway department and what we brought up last week, of all those very old articles. And I was hoping we could take a deeper
Oh.
dive and pull those articles to see if they're related to specific repairs or if they're broad, because if voters voted on these articles from 2004, 2002, and 2015, there was a need. And I'll tell you, even $30,000 from 2015, if that was for a specific job, that job today is gonna cost $60,000.
Right.
And that money sitting there from 2002, $10,000, that's maybe worth $1,000 in today's world. With the cost of materials and labor.
Right.
So
That's right.
there's approximately $60,000 sitting on the highway department's books. So, I mean, I think we need to, if we can pull those articles, figure out what's going on, and then present them to, you know, the highway department, either reallocate the funds or vote to rescind, like we
Yeah, you
did
have to
with
rescind,
the
yeah.
vapor barrier. Then we can, again, put that money out there either for different bridge repairs or sidewalk repairs. But it doesn't make sense to
Yeah.
me to have that much money sitting on the books.
Well,
for
a
this fund.
specific article for bridge repair, you would think was for that particular
A
bridge.
particular- I would-
Otherwise, it
yeah.
would be in a budget if it was, you know, a recurring thing, so.
Exactly. And did the repair happen? Did it
Yeah.
not get?
Well, it probably did get done and
allocated?
had money left over, you know?
Yeah.
So it should have been taken out of that, if that's the case.
And it wasn't just one, it was 3 different articles too. So, and he felt there wasn't enough money there, even though I think it came to like $33,000 or something. He's just not seeing it as a combined item that he could use for the highways. So bring
Right.
it back into free cash would probably help him more in the end.
Yeah,
It's old money though. It's,
yeah, oh, I
And
agree.
especially, I mean, like he mentioned, you can't touch a bridge with a paintbrush for $10,000. I mean, these bridge repairs are so expensive, so I do
Right,
definitely see where you're going, is that like,
Hmm.
if we need to make a bridge repair, we need to have a plan for how we take care of our bridges. This is one of my pet peeves. Infrastructure is such an important need in communities, but if, you know, $10,000 sitting in account isn't getting any interest, it's not, there's nothing happening to it, so, and we're not gonna be able to do anything with $10,000 on a bridge. So it's like, why don't we revisit this, and once we have a plan on how we take care of our bridges, that's when we reattack with the appropriate funds, taking care of those bridges.
And it's tied up. So if you have an emergency with a bridge up near Peterson, but that money is associated with something down toward.
are you able to pull those
You're stuck.
articles? No?
oh, yeah, oh,
It's
yeah.
gotta come from town meeting.
Oh,
No, we
oh,
can't-
change them,
No, I
yeah,
mean, are you
yeah.
able to
Oh.
find what
Copy,
the
yeah.
articles
Oh,
are?
yes, okay, yeah.
Because I tried looking on the website, but it doesn't go back that far.
Yeah, no, Gina and I can work on that together and try getting more details.
Jessica, Is Jean with us tonight? She said earlier today.
I think she just is.
Yep.
Because maybe she can explain, how those were put. They were putting so much each year on an article.
Yeah, that's what he said, Claire. Claire, that's what he said, but I wasn't here back then, so I don't.
Yeah, because I was, and
But
that's what they
I'm
were
almost
doing.
wondering if those bridge repairs can be done with Chapter 90 money.
That's another option too.
Yeah,
Chapter 90 has changed over the years. I mean, these were back in 2002. Chapter 90 has evolved into a bigger infrastructure program. I know other towns have used it for bridges.
Yep.
So I'm almost wondering if, we can't request money through Chapter 90 for that, whatever he has to do for those bridges.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if we want to, put money aside for that, do it another way or some other,
I think you need a report from him saying what exactly needs to be done with those bridges. I mean, if it was way back when they were putting money aside for them, I mean, it's been a long time what happened to the bridges between now and then.
When did Jason start working for us?
I don't know.
I want to say he's coming up on 10 or 11 years as the DPW director.
So that would be 2010.
Yeah, and these go
So
back
that
to
would be before him.
Most of it, except for there's one from 2015 for sidewalks.
Well, we know about sidewalks. We just haven't got
Hey,
to.
Eric, what if you and I look up, find out
But
what
that
all
might be
those are
something
about,
that,
and then go have a meeting with Jason, once we know what all the money was supposed to be used for, find out what the status is, and then at some point decide what the hell to do with it. Either we can use it for what it was originally done, or we do what you suggested, like we did for the barrier at the next meeting, come up and clean it out and put it somewhere. But clean it up, I agree with that,
That's
when
a
you
long
think
time.
about it,
Yeah.
yeah.
And if it doesn't,
Yeah.
it's probably not gonna get touched.
that's a good idea.
So since there's a capital plan for equipment, and again, I think, for the most part, like you were talking about reconfiguring the town hall, so there's a plan for space usage in town. Is there also a plan for infrastructure type improvements? Or is that a long-term? Have you heard of a plan? Let me rephrase this. Is it something that you think is discussed in the commission meetings and it's nothing that's been published? Or is it
I
nebulous and out here? And
I don't know. I don't know what the plan is. I know that every year, if we're gonna talk about bridges, I mean, we can talk about infrastructure, roads, bridges, that. I believe that there's a plan for roads, because that is, as Jean was just talking about Chapter 90 funds, a lot of the Chapter 90 funds go towards roads. So I do believe that there is a plan in place to take care of roads.
About that.
I have not heard of any plans on how to take care of bridges. Every year, bridges are inspected by the state, and we get a detailed report on what condition the bridges are in. But to my knowledge, again, I don't know what they talk about at the DPW commission meetings, but to my knowledge that there's no, and it's hard for communities to have a discussion about the improvement of bridges, because one bridge improvement can cost many millions of dollars. Even if it's a short little bridge, it can cost $5 million from start to finish to repair it or replace it. So I understand in that respect that it's hard to it's hard to conceptualize even the scope of the needs of these bridges in town. But nevertheless, it's still, we still need to know, right?
Well, the town, on the 422 account, which is the town roads, is almost $58,000 in there. So if we would try to figure out what they're all supposed to be for, and talk to Jason and find out what the situation is, and if that could end up being $57K towards some stuff he needs to buy, that would be better for him than do something like that. But that would clean that up out of that account.
Yeah, I mean, it just, that money's probably not gonna go anywhere, being that old, I would say, and it's losing value. I mean, whether you make interest on it in the bank or not. Like we heard today from Chief Rogowski with the truck he wanted last year, is another
Yeah.
$5,000-6,000 more in just
Yeah.
1 year.
That combi oven is too, that's gone up, I think, somewhere between like $3,000 and $5,000 in that 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, in
So-
2019, it was projected to be $10,000, and now we're in 2021, it's 15,000, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that, you know, when the town goes and makes an article at a meeting, those funds shouldn't sit there for more than a year or two. I mean, we really should go through some of the other departments as well, I feel, in the future. I
Yeah,
think, like the valuation, there's some older articles there as well, and we just voted for another $15,000.
They go for 3, they add it up for 3 years.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be any older than 3 years, I don't think. They shouldn't be. And
Yeah, I mean, but I was more concerned with these ones. They definitely weren't as old. I think
Yeah.
it was like maybe 4 years.
Right.
So.
Well, the
was it a
assessors
big
are
job
coming
to
in
pull
at the
them?
next meeting, so we
Yes.
can ask them about that.
Yeah.
Is that a big job to pull all those articles and?
No.
No,
Gene would know about that. Can you tell him?
Gene, what are your office hours?
I'm here whenever you need me.
Well, I'll tell you what, take the weekend off, and we'll probably give you a call next week.
But that's public record. We can still get copies of those actual warrants, right?
We gotta be able to,
Oh,
they must have them
absolutely.
downstairs,
Absolutely.
right?
Well, they're all in the town report, so if you go back, I know there's some, I just saw a bunch of old town reports somewhere in the closet the other day, and I know there's some in the selectman's office, all the old ones.
Hmm.
So you go back to those years and you can find the actual articles, because
Yeah.
all the warrants would be in there.
Okay.
the town clerk has every single.
Yeah, Ellen has all that
Yeah.
stuff, right.
If you want to
And
find
then-
out
But
what.
it's the same thing that Ellen has, so it's, I mean, either make Ellen go look for it, or you just go through the town reports and find it.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, Jason didn't give us a capital request yet?
He's thinking about
So
it.
when he does that, you wanted to have him come in, or you wanted the mechanic to come in, the head?
Well, I was,
They've got to
it
come in and
depends.
talk to
Again,
us.
I also, I mean, I think at the end of the year, you know, either A, it's gonna come down to, you know, it's gonna be a bloodbath and we're gonna be cutting everything because the revenue is gonna be so low, or it's gonna come so close that if it really matters to him that he gets a new piece of equipment and he has to decide between which one, I'd like to hear from the person that is tasked with keeping it running where the value really is. You know?
And then our next meeting, can we allocate some time to go through that revenue report that Gene sent over? Because I looked through that and I.
Yes,
have some
we
questions.
could.
Yeah.
Because the things, we've got, our next meeting is the assessors, the historical, the library, and the cemetery and council on aging, so they shouldn't take much time. They don't usually. The library would be the one that would, but usually hers is pretty straightforward.
I'm gonna send you guys the actual revenue, revenue report that comes off of the computer, because it also shows the personal property that's been collected so far and the real estate. So you'll have a good idea of how the collections have been going.
Excellent.
Oh, excellent.
That's what we need.
That'd be good.
I'll send that out tomorrow. I mean, it's got everything that's on, but it also has that, so, I'll send that out to you tomorrow.
Okay. So we'll set a time to go over all the revenues and that kind of stuff, Dan, like you suggested
Okay.
at the next meeting. We should have time to be able to do that.
Gene, do you
And that's
see-
gonna be Thursday, April 1st.
Gene, do you see water and sewer revenues too, or do those filter through as just a fund transfer like ambulance?
I can send you those too.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be good. And then I'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting. Does anyone else have anything else to bring up?
Nope.
If not, we can adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
everybody seconds.